what you need to know about the epic of Gilgamesh. The oldest story told, he was a superhuman king on a superhuman mission. He's looking for a way to nurture his condition. He had great power, let it go to his head. Took advantage of his people and let the rumor spread. The gods gone mad, he didn't follow their plan, but he was 2/3 God and 1/3 man. See, Gilgamesh had a friend and Kira was his name. They've caused so much trouble, but he took the blame. The gods took action and so they blew. And Kira with an awful lethal flu. On his last days alive, about the afterlife he dreamed. He told Gilgamesh about how it all seemed. Dust is their food and clay is their meat. They see no light, eternal defeat. And Kira died and Gilgamesh kept crying that his friend was gone and he was next in line. Gilgamesh didn't want to face their brutality, so he went on a journey for immortality. He killed lions and through scorpions he passed. He walked 12 weeks of darkness and so at last he reached the garden of gods and met with Sigurd. Led to Shinobi where he led all his fury. Destroyed the protection from the waters of death. To make up for his actions, he used all his breath to push the boat alone, and eventually they got to Utnapishtim, who they go the far away. They said their hellos, and Gilgamesh started asking, "Tell me, Utnapishtim, how your life is everlasting." Utnapishtim said, "Well, Ea saved me from a storm, making me and my wife the only living over form. We were mortals. In our time past, but at the mouth of the rivers we will always last." Gilgamesh said, "What can I do to be immortal? How? There must be some kind of portal." Utnapishtim said, "Okay, let's put you to the test. Prevail against sleep for 7 nights without rest." Gilgamesh tried to stay awake, but he was too weak. He woke up, saw red, he'd been sleeping for a week. Utnapishtim said, "There's one last thing you can do. It's a mystery of the gods that I'm telling you. There's a plant underwater that will wound your hands. Inside it, there's all what your soul demands." Gilgamesh doesn't wait, heads for his last hope. Tied heavy stones to his feet with the rope. He took the plant and held it in his own hand. He was headed on his way back to his homeland. But when Gilgamesh stopped for a cool water well, a serpent nearby sensed the sweet smell. He jumped out, taking the flower away. Gilgamesh sat down and wept in dismay. "I guess there's no use running from mortality. I guess I'm infected with normality. I'm going back to Europe to claim my glory. My immortality's within my story."
Okay, welcome to our first CS lecture on the Epic of Gilgamesh. Before we delve into this great epic, I would like to share with you few ideas about the purpose and importance of CS courses at the university and give you a brief outline of the content of these courses. This is a program in general education looking at different cultures and civilizations from the ancient and classical epochs till our contemporary world in a versatile approach to get what a university education has to be, to have a general view about various fields of knowledge such as literature, religion, philosophy, politics, economic life, law, art, science, and others. This knowledge enables a student to understand himself, cultivate his mind, and enrich his being. Technical studies are meant for specialization, but it is at a university where one exposes himself to cultural issues not only to be more knowledgeable, but above all to avoid lopsidedness and to have a more balanced personality. In CS, we explore man's role in the universe, his ideas, beliefs, and values. We ponder over basic universal notions that puzzled man throughout the ages. It is in this sense that we read text from different cultural accentual approach. We introduce students to diverse worldviews and different methodological approaches that continue to have an impact on human lives. We try to understand the text in its context, to get the different meanings and messages from the text, and also to interpret and learn how to have our own opinion while understanding the different cultures and civilizations. What was and what is the relation of man to himself? How did and how does man understand himself and his place in the universe? What was and what is the relation of man to his fellow men? How did and how does man enter a society? What was and what is the relation of man to nature and to the supernatural world? What was and what is the meaning of justice, liberty, love? These and other questions will be dealt with in the CS program, not with the intention of solving all the problems of the universe at the end of these courses, but to exchange ideas, relate the past to the present, dialogue with each other, tolerate different opinions, evade categorical approaches, and enrich our understanding of man and his place in the universe. The CS courses are from 201 to 208. 201 to 204 are the core courses that will lead you from late antiquity to our own time. 201, ancient and classical period. 202, philosophical, theological, and literary thought in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In 203, we reach the 17th century and the scientific revolution. It is the epoch of modernity and enlightenment, where we encounter new approaches to knowledge, morality, political systems, etc. In 204, we deal with the 20th century, Europe and the Arab world, where we are introduced to the scientific philosophy and political ideas that are influencing our contemporary world. In 205, it is the course you're taking. It's a combination of 201 and 202. 206 combination, it was combination of 203 and 204. 207 and 208 are also combination as 203 and 204, but they deal with specific themes. In 295, we deal with special topics. Before we discuss the story, themes, meaning and significance of the Epic of Gilgamesh, few words on the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia, the background of the epic, and on epic genre in general. Now, you have all on your fly sheet. You can follow. We start by ancient peoples in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, roughly present-day Iraq and parts of northeast Syria, a name given by the Greeks to the land between the two rivers, Tigris and the Euphrates, بلاد ما بين النهرين دجلة والفرات. This part in ancient Mesopotamia was called by its own inhabitants the land of Sumer and Akkad. On the Euphrates lies Uruk, one of the oldest cities in the Near East. Gilgamesh was a Sumerian king of Uruk. The Sumerians were the earliest settlers in Mesopotamia. Their language cannot be affiliated to any language we know. They were the first inventors of writing, cuneiform script, al-khat al-mismari, you see this on your fly sheet. They wrote on clay tablets, and they were urban people who lived in fortified cities. Their land was divided into small kingdoms. Together with the Sumerians lived another group, the Akkadians, named after their city, Akkad. Their language was different from that of the Sumerians, for they spoke a language which belongs to the same linguistic family as Arabic and Hebrew, called Semitic, al-Lughat al-Samiyya. The Akkadians came from a different cultural background than the Sumerians, and their peaceful cultural interaction in the area lasted for 1,000 years. The Akkadian rule was predominant in Mesopotamia in 2000 before Christ. Their language replaced the Sumerian language as both the official and the spoken language of the country. We come next to the background of the epic. The Epic of Gilgamesh was recited for nearly 3 millennia. Modern generation came to know about Gilgamesh Only after the first cuneiform fragments of the story were excavated in 1853 at Nineveh from the library of the last great Assyrian king Ashur-bani-pal, who reigned in the 7th century before Christ. Almost 20 years elapsed before the clay tablets were deciphered by George Smith at the British Museum. Before long, more fragments of Gilgamesh were unearthed, both at Nineveh and the other ancient cities. From the Sumerian king list, we do know there was a historical Gilgamesh. A story is woven around him. He reigned sometime between 3000 and 2500 before Christ in the city of Uruk near the Euphrates in what is now southern Iraq. Gilgamesh became, after his death, a hero of many tales. In these tales, he is given a semi-divine and superhuman features. Several of these tales were fixed in writing in the Sumerian language. Later on, 5 came down to us as unconnected different stories about the same hero. 1,000 years after the hero's death, these tales were joined together into literary whole written in Akkadian. The most standard version of the text is written on 12 clay tablets. The text of the standard version is partly destroyed and some passages remain obscure. The discovery of some 50 fragments of the epic in various sites of ancient Near East enables scholars to fill some of the gaps and to improve our understanding of the text. In 2011, a new tablet was discovered, Tablet 5, at Sulaymaniya Museum in Iraq. It dates back to the Neo-Babylonian period. After this brief introduction to the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia and the background of the epic, few words on epic genre in general. Epic poetry may first be defined as heroic poetry, a poetry which records the deeds of heroes. It is found in almost all great literatures of the world. Epic poetry is often found when cultures are first structured or restructured. They are often associated with the early stages of a literary tradition. Secondly, epic poetry is often a poetry of celebration. It celebrates the early deeds of individuals or tribes or peoples or cities. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, might just as well be called the Epic of Uruk, for it celebrates the city almost as much as its famous king. Thirdly, epic poetry is often backward-looking. It describes not contemporary events or reality, but looks back to a heroic past, to days gone by. In Gilgamesh, we are told many times that this is a tale of long ago, a tale of ancestors and of a golden age. Epic poetry, therefore, is often an evocation of a great past, a recreation of a golden age of heroism and great human achievements. It describes what may be called a heroic history, one in which heroes are recognizably human beings with all their virtues and faults, but seem to be slightly bigger than ordinary men and women. Epic poetry is often said to be divinely inspired, a tale, as I said, of long ago, where we are taken to a world of enchantment and super-reality. Gilgamesh and the Odyssey, which you will also be reading this semester, constitute a journey of manhood, which through the use of various literal techniques transmit the values of their respective societies. Both stories are narrative poems about an epic journey. They make use of a storytelling trick called flashback. Repetition and flashback help in making the story more interesting and draw the reader in the story. It gives an overview picture of the story, example, the flood story in Gilgamesh. But why are we reading this epic today? How does Gilgamesh's quest for immortality concern us today? How does Gilgamesh's existential change affect the way we look at ourselves and our society? What is the absurd in life? What is individuality? How can a human in the midst of all failure and losses, still reach contentment and be at peace? How can a human relate to himself and to others? What is heroism? In fact, there are many interpretations for the Epic of Gilgamesh: the psychoanalytical, the gender, the sociological, the mystical, etc. I'm going to adopt the existential interpretation as presented by Rivka Harris, Stephen Mitchell, Benjamin Foster, and others. Some authors viewed the epic as an exploration of the fear of death, but there is much more to this ancient masterpiece, which calls our attention to its timeless teachings about humanity and about life. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, is described at the beginning of the epic as a powerful king, 2/3 God and 1/3 man. He is endowed with human and superhuman qualities. He abuses his power in many ways. Quote, Gilgamesh sounds the tocsin for his amusement. His arrogance has no bounds by day or night. No son is left with his father, for Gilgamesh takes them all, even the children. His lust leaves no virgin to her lover, neither the warrior's daughter nor the wife of the noble. Yet this is the shepherd of the city, wise, comely, and resolute, unquote. This is how the grandeur and heroism of Gilgamesh is presented at the beginning of the epic. He is the undefeatable king of Uruk. He is powerful, demanding, oppressive, highly sexual ruler who is 2/3 deity and 1/3 human. His choices are guided by whim and impulse. He has experiences, but he does not know real life. Gilgamesh puts old men to work and has to have intercourse with every young bride before she sleeps with her husband. His life is routine, without restrictions or duty. He is the only free person in his kingdom, but is there freedom without responsibilities? He will soon discover that lack of restriction do not render freedom, and in the end, he cannot escape the existential that define the human experience, such as the reality of mortality. Enkidu was created as a solution to the problems brought on by Gilgamesh's extraordinary nature. He is sent on a mission from the gods who want things to get better in Uruk. How does Enkidu, the wild man, fit into the dynamic existential growth of the hero? Enkidu lives and wanders in nature. He is in a state of primitiveness. He is at home, living among other animals. He enjoys life with all its day-to-day excitement. He does not exploit the world around him, but he joins with it in a state of harmonious coexistence. While Gilgamesh appears civilized, Enkidu appears barbaric. While Gilgamesh is arrogant and desirous of subjugating others, Enkidu lives in unity with nature, eats, drinks, and sleeps with the other animals. He frees animals from their traps, and he exhibits a sense of self-morality. Nature is his home. There is no sense of alienation. He is not conscious of his own being. He simply lives his own everydayness. It's okay. A trapper sees him, tells his father, who sends him to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, as if he knew that Enkidu has to be tamed rather than captured, and the only way to civilize him is through the power of Eros, the harlot Shamhat leads Enkidu to self-awareness of what is a human being. She facilitates Enkidu's socialization, taught him to love, eat, drink, and dress, and introduced him to human intercourse as such. Enkidu could no more resume his former life. The animals avoided him, for he became more of a human. The self develops and evolves in relation to another person, and relationship play a significant role in our gaining self-consciousness. Man becomes an I through a you. In his interactions with Shamhat, Enkidu gained self-consciousness, a human characteristic which makes him different than animals. In the words of the 20th century philosopher Buber in his book I and Thou, quote, civilization should not be merely viewed at by accomplishment in art, language, culture, but also in our ability to relate to others, unquote. Enkidu's intimacy with the woman cancels his intimacy with nature. He has been transformed. The sense of alienation that humans experience in the midst of the natural world has now become Enkidu's curse as well. A sense of alienation, he's alone, develops as we satisfy our needs when we realize as conscious humans that there is something missing. You satisfy your need and then you are not satisfied, you want more. So there is something missing there. The role of the woman here, the harlot, is to teach and to lead to civilization. Enkidu's break with his formal life among wild animals is first achieved through sexual relations and is completed through learning the ways of civilized life. Shamhat transformed Enkidu from one at home with nature and wild animals into a human being who can interact with others. Conformity, as Heidegger, the 20th century German philosopher, exclaims, quote, in Being and Time, quote, takes away so much of the anxiety of the groundless nature of a human existence, unquote. Shamhat accompanies Enkidu to Uruk. Having accomplished her mission, she is gone. Now Enkidu is in Uruk. The world of Uruk is out of balance because of Gilgamesh's excesses. And Enkidu has been created to restore that balance. Enkidu wanted to defend the women and children as he used to defend animals, so he defied Gilgamesh. The fight between the two heroes is such that they came to know each other. It seems that Enkidu's humanization is complete when in Uruk he kneels before Gilgamesh and acknowledges his kingship, the institution which in Mesopotamia was a guarantee of full human life. Enkidu can now become the friend of Gilgamesh and at the same time his equal. What will be the next step? Can Gilgamesh and Enkidu go on enjoying their relationship? What is the meaning of life that is based on merriment and pleasure? Kierkegaard, the 19th century German philosopher, calls this kind of life aesthetic mode. And this mode of existence generates boredom, and man will go on seeking other sources for pleasure. No, Gilgamesh needed something thrilling, dangerous. How about slaying the monster Humbaba? One has to note here that the inauthentic life is submerged in the external, in the day-to-day distractions, in trivial excitements and empty activities. In this sense, man will not discover himself until he is gripped with sorrow, anxiety, death, and the like. Killing Humbaba and inscribing his name, meaning Gilgamesh's name, on the trees is thrilling and maybe a recompensation for Gilgamesh's anxiety and a step towards an encounter with the naked self. Not paying heed to Enkidu's reluctance, he journeys to the cedar forest in front of Enkidu, fulfills his decision, kills the monster in the forest, and heroically and arrogantly defies the goddess Ishtar. So now he killed Humbaba, he defied the goddess Ishtar, and now he is so arrogant. Ishtar is infuriated and asks her father Ainu to send the bull of heaven. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull of heaven, and the gods decide the death of Enkidu. Enkidu is now on his deathbed. He dreamt about the afterlife in Mesopotamia, a dark place where kings and ordinary people are the same. He curses the harlot and the trapper, but declined when he was reminded by Shamash of the advantages of civilization. Enkidu chooses to accept the blessing and the curses of his reaching self-consciousness as a civilized human being. His dream, however, will have its effect on the destiny of Gilgamesh and on his awareness of the finality of life and the meaning of existence. Now, Gilgamesh is affected. The afterlife is a dark place where ordinary people and kings are the same. Afraid and terrified, Gilgamesh will start reflecting on the meaning of existence, pleasure, and the like, as he exclaims, quote, "The dream is marvelous, but the terror is great," unquote. Gilgamesh is not going to forget the dream. He will treasure it to learn, change, and move to another stage in his conception of heroism and mode of existence. Enkidu died, and Gilgamesh could not comprehend that his soulmate is no more. He finds himself confronted with the absurd nature of this loss, and he realizes that the universe is indifferent to his suffering. There are no answers, no solace. He begins to question the meaning of life or its meaningless. Suddenly, death becomes an undeniable reality to him. There is no going back. What happened to Enkidu might also happen to him, he contemplates. He experiences a profound state of anxiety, which is rooted in the realization that life is moving towards death. This anxiety leads to melancholy. Life is ruled by the shadow of loss, which is already a fact. This is a prelude or beginning of change from the aesthetic and the pleasurable to the ethical. Gilgamesh wants to inquire about how to achieve immortality and who was the one who defied death. One human, Utnapishtim, was granted immortality, who might teach him to conquer death as well. Dressed in animal skin, he started on his second journey, experiencing a metamorphosis in himself. He felt that he could not return to his old self. By dressing in animal skin, in a symbolic act, he separates himself from the masses and his historicity so as to resist falling into what Heidegger called the self, living for others, from whom the secrets are hidden. He now wants to find the immortal Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh passes through different stages in his journey. These stages are like steps. Anyone who wants to talk can go out. I'm not obliging anybody to remain. But if you are here, you have to listen. Gilgamesh passes through different stages in his journey. These stages are like steps leading him to find himself, his individuality. The 12 leagues of darkness are symbolic, reflecting a soul in turmoil to reach the reality of its existence. Reaching the garden of the sun, Shamash led him to Siduri, the woman of the wine. Gilgamesh is still in a transitory period. Moving towards self-consciousness was still in the making, so he was infuriated when Siduri barred her gate. He arrogantly said to her, quote, "Young woman, maker of wine, why do you bolt your door? What did you see that made you bar your gate? For I am Gilgamesh, who seized and killed the bull of heaven. I killed the watchman of the cedar forest. I overthrew Humbaba, who lived in the forest, and I killed the lions in the passes of the mountain," unquote. And Siduri brought him back to himself and his limits as a human. She said, quote, "If you are that Gilgamesh, why are your cheeks so starved? And why is your face so drawn? Why is despair in your heart and your face like the face of one who has made a long journey? Yes, why is your face burned from heat and cold? And why do you come here wandering over the pastures in search of the wind?" Unquote. Gilgamesh came back to himself to realize that he was not as strong and invulnerable as he once thought. So he answered, And why should not my heart be starved and my face drawn? Despair is in my heart, and my face is the face of one who made a long journey. He speaks about the death of Enkidu and that he wanted to look for Utnapishtim. Siduri assists Gilgamesh in his dangerous journey to find Utnapishtim after offering him a piece of advice. She says, Gilgamesh, where are you hurrying to? You will never find the life for which you are looking. When the gods created man, they allotted to him death, but life they retained in their keeping. As for you, Gilgamesh, fill your belly with good things day and night, night and day. Dance and be merry, feast and rejoice. Let your clothes be fresh. Bath yourself in water. Cherish the little child that holds your hand, and make your wife happy in your embrace, for this too is the lot of man. Unquote. Siduri's advice is not only realistic and a simple call for pleasure. She's advising him to come to terms with death and life at the same time, to be realistic and to recognize his limits. Siduri, as we said, guides him to Urshanabi, the ferry boat man, who will in turn take him to Utnapishtim. This is the last chance for Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh had questions to ask, and Utnapishtim proved to him that he does not have the stuff of immortality. He challenged him to be awake for 7 days, but Gilgamesh failed the test. Utnapishtim then gave him his last chance. He guided him to a magical plant that will restore him to youth. Gilgamesh plunges into the great deep, finds the plant, and brings it to the surface. He caused the plant, speaking to Urshanabi, quote, the antidote to the fear of death. He's very happy he found the plant. But on his way back to Uruk, Gilgamesh baths in a pond, leaving the plant on the ground. A snake ate the plant. Her skin shone, and Gilgamesh helplessly lost his last chance. What will he do? Lose all hope? Continue searching anxiously? Or go back to build his city? Gilgamesh weeps for a while. Aware of himself and his limitation, he leaps to an ethical mode of existence where he realizes that he has to move on as he discovers himself, his limitations, and his reality. He realizes that heroism is not in power, glory, and transient pleasures, but in wisdom and maturity. Killing Humbaba and the bull of heaven are all ephemeral episodes that have no permanence. What lasts is to find yourself in the midst of the absurdities of life. The mysteries of life seemed to open in front of his eyes as he addressed Urshanabi with the following words, quote, I found a sign and now I have lost it. Let us leave the boat on the bank and go, unquote. This is how they move on to Uruk. Gilgamesh started from his city, and he ended there. Upon reaching Great Uruk, Gilgamesh finds himself transformed by a profound sense of awakening. This is a personal existential change that enabled Gilgamesh to move to the ethical mode. True, he does not know the secret of immortality, but he discovered the majesty of his city. He realizes that work proper to man and to his destiny is to build, to create a world of his own, as well as to die. He wants to become a good king. The change in him is an inner change, an existential one. What matters most is commitment to others, which is ultimately the purpose of existence. He discovers that his existence is not only about his kingdom, his possessions, but the, quote, possibilities that await his discovery, unquote. Gilgamesh is a story about arrogance, humility, life, ethics, love, friendship, the absurd, the meaning of life or its meaninglessness, and death. In the aesthetic stage, Gilgamesh was driven by immediate pleasures, power, and fame. Then he found himself caught in the grip of despair, to discover that he has to live a life of commitment, where meaning is sought not in one's own satisfaction, but in acknowledging the needs of others. This is how Gilgamesh moved to the ethical stage, from the self-indulging, self-centered, pleasure-seeking state of existence to despair, to a profound realization that brings him comfort, to societal regulations, the realization that he has a people to lead, to serve, and to satisfy. The image in which he finds contentment is not in him finding immortality, but discovering the beauty of his city and how it needs his wholehearted commitment. He is immortalized. As thousands of years later, we are still marveling at the messages embedded in his story. I'm not trying to preach here. I'm just conveying my understanding of Gilgamesh, the perplexed seeker and the wanderer who lives within all of us, who has a timeless message. The message he shares with us was brought forth in the midst of uncertainty and despair, when he had to learn how to accept limitations, possibilities, and inherent beauty, to rely on his naked self, to grapple with the absurd. As Jean-Paul Sartre exclaimed in his book, No Exit, human life begins on the far side of despair, unquote. Thanks for your attention.